Hey guys, Phil Harris here, and as you'd have seen a couple of days ago, I released my remix of Alan Walker's new song called Play. And in this week's video, I want to run you through exactly how I went about creating that remix and the thoughts in my head as I made it. Now, I know a lot of you are thinking, this is a DJ channel, so why are you showing us music production? Well, it's because I firmly believe that if you guys want to get onto the big stages as DJs, in front of the big crowds at festivals and stuff like that, you really need to start producing your own dance music. See, people we love like Marshmello, Martin Garrix, Deadmau5, all these guys, they got famous by producing music first, and then they went around and DJing was a tool they used to just play out the music they were making. So guys, even if you're watching this and you're like, I don't really care about music production, I suggest you just watch it and begin to get your head around how it works. Because you never know, in a couple of months or maybe a year or two, you'll be producing your own music like this and building your own following and your own fans who love you just for the music you play and will then come and see you DJ. Cool, so without further ado, let's jump on the computer. I'm going to show you some stuff. So, I started off with the song just by itself. Now, the song by itself was originally 103 BPM, and it sounded a bit like this. And I decided, right, I want to turn this into a banger. I want this to be like a big club banger with a big drop. So the first thing I did was I came up here and I made the song a hell of a lot quicker, 132 BPM. So now it sounds like this. Cool. The next thing I started working on was the actual drop itself. I was like, how would I want this to go and what kind of drop would I want this to go into? And I thought, well, I want to create a really bass heavy drop. So first thing I did was I put in a kick, which sounds a bit like this. Then a clap. And then I was like, right, I want to give this song a bit of swing. So I put in these toms, which you'll see kind of adds a little bit of swing to the song. See how it kind of adds a bit of swing to it rather than just a kick, clap, kick, clap? So, the next thing I decided to do was just go and work straight on the bass line, okay? So this bass line has actually got 4 different layers to it, which means there's 4 different sounds all playing the same thing, essentially, but adding to the sound. So the first sound I had was this one here. And let me just play it by itself. And how I came up with this was I actually just drew this bass line in. As you can see, it's pretty simple. So I just got the note and just drew it in like this. Now, a lot of my favorite EDM and kind of big room house tracks start with 3 big hits at the beginning of the drop. Dun, dun, dun. And then it goes into different stuff. Listen to people like Tujamo, Steve Aoki's kind of older tracks. A lot of your kind of big room house tracks start off with 3 big hits, which is why I had the 3 notes at the start. Have a listen to it. Cool. The next thing you need to know about this bass line is I actually went in and automated, let me just grab this, I automated the pitch on each of the notes. So you can kind of control what happens to the pitch. So instead of it just going dun, 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 it goes down, 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 go out, like that. You can see these different colors here. So I automated that just to make it sound a little bit more organic rather than just static. Right, next thing I wanted to do was layer this sound to make it sound bigger. Now, you could say, well, why didn't you just EQ it? But sometimes you need to add new sounds because all the different harmonics work together and just make the sound a lot bigger. So I decided I wanted a little bit more body to the sound. So I found this sound and added it to it. So it sounded like this. Have a listen to it without and with, and you'll notice it's got a bit more body to it, a bit more mid-range. Cool. Next thing I wanted to do was add a bit of highs. So I found a really kind of crunchy sound. In fact, this was a sample of like a dubstep fill that sounds a little bit like this. Let me see if I can just play it by itself. I think it's a lot lower than that. So it sounded a bit like that. And what I did was I EQ'd it so you just had the highs of this sound. So again, let me just play it without any effects. I just sampled it and then took all the highs of it. So it sounds like this. And again, if I add it all in. So you're really starting to get somewhere with this now. But the other thing which I do all the time with my bass is I have the sub-frequencies separated from the high frequencies. So I grouped those top 3 bass sounds and just took out all the bass, which actually I think I did them individually. Yeah, so you can see on every single lane I EQ'd out any sub-frequencies on each. And then down on this sub frequency here, I just took the sub. Now I'm going to play this, but if you listen to it on a phone or anything that's got small speakers, you won't hear this, okay? This is what it sounds like. Then add it in with the sounds. Cool, so then I had my main kind of bass line for the drop. The next thing I wanted to do was add a bit more emphasis into the beginning of the drop. So I went and I found this kind of horn sound, which I know when you add a horn in with a bass, it's kind of like an impact sound, which sounds like this. Okay, mix it in with the drop. And then here's another one. So you got this. And then you got this one. Cool, so that's just like an impact noise really. So at that point I kind of had quite a cool bass line and I had this horn sound. Then I went back up and I added a little bit more percussion. So you can see I added these rides in which sound a little bit like this. And added into the song, it kind of adds quite a lot of impact. I took that bit out because of other stuff that I added later on. And I added some more rides up here. And let's have a look. I think that's everything. Yeah, I ended up not using that sound in the end. So, cool. Next thing I did was I was like, how can I add some of the original of the song into my drop so it doesn't just sound like 2 completely separate songs? So I went and I found these chords from the original of the song. Now, I've got to take all the effects off first so you can hear exactly what I've done here. The chords from the original sound a bit like this. If I slow it right down to 103, you might recognize those from the original. And I kind of chopped them up a little bit, but you can recognize them from the original. It sounds very Alan Walker, right? But if I put it back up, it sounds like this. The next thing I wanted to do is kind of put a bit of a stabby effect on it. So I use this volume automation plugin, which kind of only lets in bits of the sound, so it sounds like this. Okay, next thing I did was I put another effect on, which kind of dipped it. It's like a side chain, so every time the kick hits, it drops the sound. You can see here there's this dip and then it comes back up. That is the area where the kick would go, so go boom, ga 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 boom, ga 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 boom, ga ga ga. In fact, if I just play them both with the kick, you'll hear exactly what I'm talking about. Next thing I did was I added this plugin here which kind of makes the effect swirl around from the left speaker to the right speaker to make the sound a bit wider. Now add this back into the drop and it sounds a bit like this. Now, the other thing you'll hear as well is this little sound here, which leads perfectly into these kind of juttery chords. All this is you take a little section of the original sound, you put loads of reverb on it, then you flatten the sound, and reverse the sound, okay? So you can see loads of tutorials of that online, like a reverse swell effect. But once you reverse it, it makes this amazing kind of swell sound. And it kind of leads your ear into the sound. Now, on the second drop down here, I actually used a different part of Alan Walker's song. So there was a bit that just sounded like this at the end. And I just used that in the second half of the drop. So, have a listen. The next thing I wanted to add in was more vocals from the actual original song in the middle of the drop. So I've taken little vocal chops like this. Let me just add them all back in so you can hear them. Here's one. And listen to it in the drop. And here's a couple of other ones as well. And I think down here, this is just a repetition of him saying me. And this really starts to make the effect that it's part of the original song, even though I've completely rebuilt this part of the song. So let's have a listen to this section here. This by itself, it sounds like this. But add it back in with the rest of the song. So, it's really cool. Now, I've done a couple of things, like for example, on this section here, I actually lowered what is it called? I transposed it. So I basically knocked it down 12 semitones to make it 1 octave lower. Now, originally it would have sounded like this, right? But I knocked it down to 12 and it gave it that really like lower voice sound, which is really cool. So, that's all the different vocals done. Once I had all these elements sorted, I knew I had most of my drop done. But then I wanted to go about adding little effects to it to make it sound a little bit more professional, I guess. So, on this bit here where it says, "You came for me," I decided I wanted to add a couple of effects just to kind of beef this up. So, one of the effects is this kind of reverse swell sound back into the bass. Again, same thing, took a section, reverb, flipped it, okay? A bit of white noise building into this sound. And this cashmere effect down here, which is like a kind of glitchy kind of effect, which sounds like this. And if you put all these effects together, with the bit that says "You came for me," which is back up here, let me just go back up and get it. Here it is, this bit here, it sounds like this. And then add it all back into the song and you get this. The next effect which I used was this kind of glitchy sound here. So let me just play it to you. And this sound down here. Now, believe it or not, this was just an effect that I ran my bass through. So there's a plugin called Nexus that has different bass sounds. And what I did was I just tried out the bass line with a few random kind of dubstep sounds. And it came out with a sound that was very similar to this. It was like a wobble sound. And all I ended up doing was actually just freezing the track and flattening it so I could get just that sound. And then I cut it up. So when you add those two back into the track, it sounds like this. And then again, I added this other little glitchy sound back in here. I think this is the same one as that. You know, I said earlier on there was this the third sound, which was like a dubstep effect. I added this little effect back in down here. By itself, it sounds like this. And then add it into the mix, sounds a little bit like this. It's really subtle. If I went back, I probably wouldn't even bother putting it in, right? So, just to play you a little bit of the original song, I'll play it at the right speed as well, so 103 BPM. It sounded a little bit like this. And I was like, right, okay, well my drop's a lot heavier than that, so I need to put a big build in. So, it was 132 BPM. I took the word me and I repeated it, so it sounds like this. So it went from his song into this. The next thing I wanted to add was a big epic snare build, which sounds a bit like this by itself. I put like a weird little drum fill in beforehand, so it sounded like this. And when you put all that together, you get something that sounds a little bit like this. So at that point I realised that the build sounded a bit empty like that, so I added a big sub drop down at the bottom, which sounds like this. I also added like a kind of white noise sound here. So now when you add it all together, it sounds like this. The next thing I added in was other effects from my drop, so it would lead you into the drop a bit better. So you can hear these kind of glitchy noises here like this. And I also added in that kind of guitar sound. It's not a guitar sound, it's the chords from Alan Walker's song, which I used in the drop, but it sounds like a guitar to me. And then, after that, the only two elements I had was a riser that sounded like this, and a white noise riser, which sounded like this. And that was my entire build-up, apart from a little vocal chop just before the drop, which sounded like this. Now, if I play just that and the drop, you'll hear it. And this is the entire build-up that I created, which I just explained to you as well. And guys, there's one last element which I forgot to mention as well, which is this one here, which you probably heard going, play for me, play for me. So all I did was I took the little vocal section that said play for me, I pitched it down 12 semitones, and then what I did, which you can't see now because I've actually flattened it, but I went in, clicked this thing here, I clicked that, and I went to clip, and I went to transpose, and I transposed it so it's got higher and higher. You'll hear it particularly towards the end, pitching up like that. And then there you go, guys. That's pretty much the main elements I put into this song. So started off with drums, clap, different percussions. Then I worked on my bass line because I knew that was going to be the main part of my drop, was the bass line. Once I had the bass line, I added in the trumpet sound to add emphasis to the bass line. After that, I went about adding in the original of the song into the main drop to kind of really make it glue with the original, so it didn't just sound like two separate songs. So I took those chords, I took some vocal stuff, I took the little bits to put inside the drop. The other benefit to adding these in as well is it kind of gives the audience a little bit of a break from the kick and the bass. So when it comes back in, it kind of keeps the energy going. You see, when these vocal chops come in like this, I actually drop all the other instruments. So there's no bass playing there and there's no kick playing there. Have a listen. That's why it kind of has a bit more emphasis when it comes back in. Remember guys, music is always about kind of builds and drops. you know, building tension and then releasing it. And when you take away the bass and the kick and starve the audience of bass and kick and then throw it back at them, they feel it so much more than just constantly keeping it there. So that's the other good thing about adding in these little vocal chops throughout your drop. So there we go, guys, that's pretty much it. The rest of the song is all pretty basic stuff, you know, a bit of a kick, bit of a clap here and there. The drop is the main thing that I did. So there we go, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope I didn't ramble too much, and I hope everything I said kind of made sense. Now, each of these elements I could talk for hours on, but I can't because this would literally be a 12-hour video. But if you guys do want to learn more about this kind of stuff, everything from, you know, mixing, mastering, all that kind of stuff, make sure you go and check out beginnerabletonlessons.com where I'll teach you. I hope you like this video. I'm going to do a DJ set later in the week where I'm going to actually put this song in the DJ set, so make sure you subscribe for that one. Make sure you leave a comment, tell me what you thought of this video, if you've learned anything at all, and finally make sure you like the video. Hope you like it, and later on in the week I'm going to be doing another DJ set, so I'll see you guys then. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. Ciao!